for me, I believe that creating a safe environment for a child from when they are born is very important, because that is what shapes who they become tomorrow, so that we don't pass trauma to generations. It is a high time we heal our generation.
When I was a young boy, probably there was a lot of shouting in the house or something like that. And I'm a bit sensitive to when in communication with a person, and they shout, they take me into a fight. I think I'll just call it into fight mode, without probably even considering if it's a small issue or a big issue. It's something that I learned the other day. It's called rejection sensitivity dysphoria or something like that, whereby you go into fight mode without even realizing it. It's your subconscious trying to protect you. You go back to that being that little boy who felt helpless, but now that you're a bit grown, you want to fight for yourself.
The being away from my parents and siblings from a young age was a trauma of its sorts. Helped me view life differently as I learned how to be alone quite early. It's such a trauma because I've not recovered from that as an adult. I like being alone. It's my most comfortable space. I think it's quite heavy because it also affects my relationships with other people and the people I meet on a day-to-day for different reasons. Could be work, could be friendships, could be relationships, romantic in this case. The others, of course, are productive, like your guardians being hard on you in school. It's a good trauma. It gives something that, let's say, society considers very important. However, at a personal level, not much to it, though it's something I feel like I relate to on a day-to-day, like as I go about my daily experiences.
What did not happen? So, for example, if a child was neglected right from when they were between the ages of 1 to 3, they were never provided for emotional stability. That is what we call type 2 trauma, because they lived in an environment that the child perceived was very threatening, and their emotional experience was then destructing to them. And if you go into the science of trauma, you will understand that the body keeps the score, because the trauma is experienced, yes, emotionally, but it manifests physiologically. So for example, there was a scientific research or case that was found in the US, and there was this boy who was the age of 4. He was sexually abused and he was always sickly. So one day they go to the hospital and the doctor is like, I've given you medication, but you seem not to be improving. In fact, week on week, the boy came back with what we call somatic illnesses, which are trauma-based. These are diseases caused by trauma but are seen in the body. And the doctor decided, let's do a bone density test on this boy. The boy was 7 years at that time, and they found that his bone density was 4 years. When they did a family history, they realized that this boy was sexually abused at the age of 4, but his body had stunted growth at the age of 4, yet his chronological age was 7. So you can be able to see how trauma literally affects all of us. And I think it's a topic that our society doesn't talk about a lot. And in psychology, we say what is not talked about is transmitted. In short, trauma affects all of us.
From the scientists and the evidence that we have, we know that environment affects the child's growth almost over 50%. Apart from the genes. So the environment that a child grows in shapes them emotionally, psychologically, physically. I'll give an example. You have one child who has grown up in a home where everything is given into them, like there's love, there's nurturing, there's healthy diet, there's exercise. The parent is there for them, listening to them. That child will grow emotionally stable compared to a child who had an absent parent. When they come from school, maybe they don't even have anyone to receive them. They don't have food that is ready for them. Maybe they have a parent who is going through substance use disorder. So maybe they are brought up knowing, seeing the father or the mother come home and they're using drugs at home, or maybe they're used to a father or a mother having violence in the house. So that definitely brings now trauma to the child as they're growing, and that is what affects the child even afterwards, because the brain development of a child happens especially in the first 5 years of life, and that will carry them through until adulthood. So yes, environment is very important. So a safe home will determine how a child turns up later.
How I feel that society has impacted the person that I've become is through, we were very close as cousins, and we were brought up like brothers. There was some togetherness, kusaidiana. It's actually making me feel a bit sorry of what is going on in the world right now, where you see a brother and a sister are killing each other because of land, and they never worked for, their parents are the ones who left it as an inheritance. How I was brought up is that this is your brother, and that is, okay, it's my cousin, but he's my brother according to me. So I would literally do everything in my power to, if they're in trouble. That is the way I was brought up.
Yeah, society has this thing of being very positive to children as they are growing up. It's like, this kid will be a genius. This kid is very different. This kid is talented. So, of course, every kid experiences that growing up in Kenya. It doesn't matter exactly in which spaces you're growing up into. It's that anything growing up, any positive or like initiative towards learning or like willingness towards being a kid who has a better affinity to what the adults are doing will get clapped on. So I think the structure of our society tries to provide to the question, whereby the question, as you asked it, is, does the society support the child? And say, as myself growing up, yes, it does. That's its method. The method is like just clapping for everything, and then further along we'll correct what it is that we don't think is right. So at that moment, it's being clapped on. We don't see, or we can't do much to the child because we want to see what that becomes. Then further along, which is where I think society gets it wrong, is as soon as you finish learning those, or like complete the process of being supported in this structure that they set up for you growing up as a child, then as soon as you hit adulthood, the goalposts, they get shifted by the adults themselves in the society who set up these systems, because they were supporting you as a child to grow up into something, and then now that you're all grown, the metric is kind of altered.
During COVID, there was this lady that was trying to make a fridge that would transport vaccines to remote areas of the country. Now, I guess that is really using your creativity to the best of your ability. Or probably someone read a sermon about something from the Bible. Akafil, naona kama nimeona vi different. Goes to social media, posts it, and probably it's something different, because we're all different people. We get different meanings from different scripts. But on the other side, I don't know if this is actually creativity, because this TikTok midnight live thing where people are making money and where they're selling their bodies, in short. Can you say that is creativity? I'm not really sure. But if you look at it if you think that is creativity, that's on the negative side. So I think it depends with the individual, what you're doing, what you feel is right, how you've grown up and know what is right and wrong to you. So I'm thinking it's really about the individual creativity. It depends on the individual.
With coping with their traumas, is the youth using creativity in the proper way? I think the question is also kind of conflicted, because it asks about coping with the traumas and then leaves the creativity to handle the trauma. So in my opinion, the question is conflicted in its setting, because we should view as the trauma as one thing and find methods to deal with that. The society needs a framework to first look at the traumas for what they are independently, then it can take the youth for who they are and push them into creativity spaces, whereby the creativity is not an exit. It's a, let's say, it becomes a vocation. It's like, or a volition, whereby this is what this person does, regardless of their traumas or their mental state. So that's their job, so to say, or what they wake up to do. It might be beneficial or not in terms of financial gain, but that's fair. So creativity should be used as a means to create volition and sense of purpose for the youth. Then whether the framework we handled in the first section of the question, this in terms of the traumas, exists or not, the youth will be able to move with the traumas, because essentially also we do nothing to the traumas, we just realize them and we live with them. So we can use creativity as a platform to create purpose, and a youth with purpose will be able to maneuver life situations better, because everyone has traumas. Every youth in this question has traumas, and what their purpose can help them deal with their traumas better on a day-to-day, where they do that independently as a being.
So that question is very important. How can a parent teach a child that it's okay for them to get bored? I remember growing up, like, there was always activity after activity, and sometimes even right now, we feel that it's always good to just keep the child engaged. So if it's not this, have the iPad. If it's not the iPad, have the phone. But it's very important for us to teach our children that it's okay to be bored. It's okay to not have anything to do. But during that time when you have nothing to do, what can you do? Can you be creative? Can you take a paper and maybe draw something? Can you take a paper and do some painting? Can you be creative and create your own activities, so that it doesn't have to be always that they have to be stimulated by something to keep them entertained? Because the moment there is always something to stimulate them, that's how even in adulthood they will do. They'll always be looking for the next dopamine, the next dopamine, the next dopamine. And the next dopamine could come from things that are not very good for them.
Okay, first of all, let me just say, when I was in school, it was the 844 system. In a polite way to say this, I'm looking for a polite word. 844 is pathetic. Pretty pathetic. Because you focus on everything is theoretical. It's not practical. Whereby, if you've realized watoto wakitoka shule after Form 4, when they go to university, they get this kind of freedom. When they were in school, they were like caged up and all locked in. I was the same. Whereby you go to university and there's all this like free time, whereby there's no teacher to follow up on you, on your grades. The practical part of 844 is pretty pathetic. That's the only one. It's terrible because you don't really get to do things like problem solving. Everything is about grades. It's about performance. The CBC system, everybody is kind of criticizing it, but I think we should give it time, whereby it's more practical. The kids, at least for the first time, we are going to look at the strong points of kids in that they're good in football or art or music. They start focusing on it from the beginning. You do CRE, you do history, you do geography. And then when you're out of school, what do you really want to do? You're confused as well.
The school systems I attended were quite rudimentary. Like those places that are very structured. They have this, let's say, doctrines of following on a day-to-day and even in your thinking. In retrospect, it affects how you think post the education system. That's what I think. On the positive side is that it, since it started out quite early, my school systems and what let's say, relating to question 1, is that it made me two things. The first one was obedient. So I first had the word responsibility at a young age, at around 8, and tried to understand it. But as I was trying to break into responsibility, I started by being obedient. And being obedient is not necessarily good, because like it can be detrimental to self. Then I started moving towards more responsibility. But the school systems drove me towards more of being a disciplined person, because that's the underlying principle of the places I attended in school. So it becomes more of a discipline thing. It affects how I am as a person too, as well. Let's say I can say you pick an example of time. I like being on time. I feel bad when I'm not on time, not because of the other person. It just affects me as a person. That I am 2 minutes late. It doesn't sit well with me before it irritates the other person. It irritates me. So I think that's something that I experience on a day-to-day, and it's an effect of the school system.
The education system could affect how a child is growing. I will answer through experience. For me, I grew through the 844 system, and I feel that 844 system was a very good system, but at the same time, it had its own advantages and disadvantages. We've seen that because we were not taught so many of technical skills, now when most of us have graduated, most people don't have jobs. So that education system then is not as helpful as what it was supposed to be. And once people now are more jobless, that has affected them very much, because it has predisposed them to things like depression. And then it has led them to get involved in things like substance use disorder, because they went to school, they got very good degrees, even some of them have first-class honors, but then they're jobless. So for me, I feel that the education system should be able to bring out a child who, even if they don't end up in the formal sector, then they will end up in the informal sector and they'll do just fine. So we've seen that the government saw that there was a gap with the 844, and they introduced a CBC system, which, if you ask me, if the CBC system is done the right way, then I feel that it is a very good education system, because it is teaching children not just how to do maths, English, and science, but it is teaching them how to do things technically, how to think outside the box, how to be creative. So if that child comes outside here and they don't end up in the formal sector, then they have a fallback plan, which is very important for them. So yes, if done the right way, it is a very good system.
You can only say one person then. That's Anthony Wambugu Muriithi. I am Muriithi Wambugu, so he's my dad. My old man, when I was growing up, was a silent type. He actually quit alcohol for more than 18 years, because when he was when he's saying this to me when I was a bit grown, just a few years ago, he was saying that if you're still drinking, our family would not have been together, because in his side of the family, he believes that alcohol makes them go mad in some kind of way. So I appreciate his sacrifices. In secondary school, all of my, usually there's visiting day, there's praise giving day, there's all these kind of visit days that the parents have open day. He only missed one, but on that specific day, he sent 2 of his younger brothers to come. The sacrifices he's made make me want to sacrifice that for my son, because it's an example he set, which I really loved, because he gave up everything for his family, man.
I like how the questions are connected. So I'll start with the school systems. I went to this school system that was quite structured, and headmaster's name was Mr. Kibaya. Literally, if you mess with his name, it means like he's a bad guy, or like comes with so much roughness. But he came out as a gentle person. He made the system quite bearable at that time, and that felt like an authority in learning something different from what I was taken to school to learn. But greatly, as a man growing up, the authority I've always looked up to is my father. He was present as a father, and he tried to guide through and through what was going on. And I have greatly revered him as a point of authority. This also goes because in the same light, my father was also a point of authority for other people. So it was just imperative to just comply with the others. But it was great, even though I didn't see a different side of him running or like being the authority. And the authority was productive in that through and through, I as a person, I can always recall that if I had a point where I was, let's say I was conflicted, let's say I would take to see that I take back to this, I either take the authority of this person on what they say, or like I seek the authority to proceed with what I think is important for me at that stage of life. So I think the question of which authorities I looked up to and how much, and if they influenced rather my growing up, I would say greatly. And because growing up is a constant process, I find that if you're looking up to any authority, then you maintain in looking for that authority through and through, because you, again, as you live being a child of society, so as to say, now you're become a child, because every adult is a child anyway. So that's how I think about authority and how it influenced me, and also taught me how to view authority in the correct way, to learn, because in authority is one of the best spaces to learn, say, things like loyalty in the current times, or like in the times I've grown up in.
It's not paying, it's appreciating. It's not really paying as in you appreciate them, not si lazima ikuwe pesa. With time, with your time, you talk to them, know what's going on with them. Yeah, I feel like I need to appreciate them because they gave a lot. Some things we never saw, but as a grown up, as you're growing old, you see some of the sacrifices probably you have to make for your son, and then you look at it from, you view it back and see what your dad was doing. I'll give you a very good example. You would be walking with dad in town, namwambia, "Eh, dadi nataka chipo." Anakwambia sina do. Unashangaa msee, anakosaje do na tumetoka kununua vitu za karibu ngiri 10. But now that I'm a grown up, there are times haula hiyo do. So you appreciate it. They need to be appreciated, man.
No, actually I don't. As a son, do I feel I should pay my parents back for all the sacrifices they made while raising me up? No, I don't think that's correct. And this does not like say underscore to how I grew up, because we all don't grow up the same. So I believe that every person, regardless of where they are born, should not have a weight, let's say, to repay their parent. Essentially, what should happen, what this paying back the sacrifices should be, is like should be considered as maybe the question should read, as a son, do you feel obliged to improve the conditions of living of your parents? Because that's mostly impactful. You'll have created an impact in their lives through and through. So the sacrifices that they made become an impact, where they're able to see, let's say, visible change. It could be physical or tangible or non-tangible, but the improved quality of life should be what should be looked at. However, is it an obligation? This also underscores what the state in which these sacrifices were made, and the people who made the sacrifices. Because then it creates a bad situation if you feel like then the sacrifices were made for you to repay them, and the spirit in which they were made. But if the sacrifices were made for the betterment let's say, in which the spirit in which I'm trying to underscore in my response, whereby we are trying to improve the quality of life, then it creates a better society for everyone. Because then we are not, let's say, quote, competing on who gets to sacrifice more, because at this point, the person who sacrificed first might feel like they sacrificed more than the person who's sacrificing in post, or like to pay back. Yeah, I don't necessarily feel the urge or like obligation to pay back as a son, but I do feel necessary from a point of person to, let's say, improve their quality of life. Yes. I wanted to add something regarding also these sacrifices, because as the parent is making the sacrifices, they're also bringing up someone in society, as we have tackled in a couple of questions in our discussion. And the type of person they're raising up is totally lies squarely on them. So if they raise someone who doesn't, or who does feel obligated to pay back their sacrifices or find a best way to come back with their sacrifices, then it's totally up to them and who they are as people. So the question cuts across both the person who's receiving the sacrifices in the time and the person who sacrificed in the beginning, in terms of their character and also in the spirit in which the sacrifices were made.
Okay, in conclusion, the greatest or the worst prison you can ever be in is in your mind. You will not even realize that you're in a prison. You need to take care of your mental welfare, because the mind is a very powerful tool that sometimes you underestimate. Sometimes you might do things that you never understand. That sometimes probably they are normal to you, but out there they are abnormal. And probably this is because when you're growing up, it was the norm in your house. That puts it probably as a trauma. So dig in back there in your head. Try find out what the core issue is. Try and solve it. Ask your God for the help to do that, because only God can help you, not even therapist will help, but God is the one who will help you out in that. And once you get out of that prison, trust me, the only way to go is forward. Thank you very much.